Good evening. Wanted to start the meeting of the Osseo Area School Board, a special meeting. The purpose of the special meeting is to select the next superintendent of the Osseo Area Schools. Topic will be superintendent search. This is the first round interviews. Board members tonight will interview candidates for the superintendent position. I want to start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The meeting will come to order at 7:05 p.m. on, 5:05, yes, p.m. on Monday, April the 2nd. I wanted to go around with me this evening, if everybody could introduce themselves. This is Mike Osseo, Board Chair.
Heather Douglas, Board Member.
Stephanie Fortner, School Board Member.
Jessica Craig, School Board Member.
Jim Brigette, School Board Member.
All right, thank you. Now, I'm breaking the audience boundary here. The board is asking audience members tonight who are present to share their impressions of each finalist. So if you have the note card for each person, please feel free to share, and we are encouraging that. Please complete a form for each candidate, and then drop the completed forms in the basket on the table when you leave. And I ask everybody to please silence your cell phones, just as a reminder. Thank you. Okay, Craig.
Thank you, Chair. Board members, members of the community, staff, faculty, students, good evening. This is a very important night. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Eric Pruitt. Eric is our first candidate coming forward this evening for your review and discussion, and I know that he has a few words that he would like to share with each of the board members if we may. So, Eric, if you want to introduce yourself to each of the board and then have a seat at the table, please.
Hey, Dr. Pruitt, Mike Osseo. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Hi.
Eric Pruitt.
Hi, Dr. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your time this evening, coming up in this wonderful weather we're having. Springtime in Minnesota can be oh so much fun. So we have several questions that we wanted to go around. If you wanted to kick off with a brief introduction or anything, that would be fine. If not, we have about 15 questions and about 50 minutes. We wanted to keep some time, and we would like to try to get through all of them. It may not be possible. It depends upon your answers and what you want to focus on. But we will have a timekeeper, 25 minutes, just to keep us a little bit on schedule. So if you wanted to start with an intro or not, we can go into questions.
Sure. First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me here. Again, my name is Eric Pruitt. I'm originally from Indianapolis, Indiana, but currently I'm living in Houston, Texas, where I'm the area superintendent for the Houston Independent School District. Prior to being in Houston, I was a deputy chief in Chicago Public Schools, where I grew up professionally. That's where I first started teaching as a first grade teacher after the Marine Corps. I'm married for the past 23 years, and I currently have five children who keep me very busy throughout the year. But I just want to reiterate that I'm very excited to learn more about the district and help you make a decision moving forward.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll start with the first question. So just wanted to, if you could, please provide some specific examples of how you have promoted educational programs utilizing your communications and public relations skills. One of the key issues of the role is to be the face of the school district out with the public. So how have you promoted educational programs?
So currently, I'm the area superintendent for the Achieve 180 campuses in Houston Independent School District. And what that means is I currently support the underserved and underperforming campuses within the district. And so I currently support 34 campuses approximately 26,000 students in those 34 campuses. And Achieve 180 is intended to give specific supports to campuses that have been underperforming over the past few years through providing essential positions, curriculum, using data around how we are intending to move campuses forward. So what that looks like for us is we have weekly PD for all of our teachers. We have PD once a month for our principals. We also have systems of supports for our campuses, whether that be IAT, Intervention Assistance Team, to help with identifying kids that need support through special ed services. We have new teacher support for our new teachers, because historically in underperforming campuses, those are the campuses that have difficulty recruiting some of the best teachers. And so with new teacher coaches, our goal is to not only recruit very effective teachers, but then keep them on these campuses. That way, they're able to build their historical knowledge about the school and families, and then better support these campuses. In addition to that, our schools also are participating in what we call Literacy by 3, Literacy in the Middle, and Literacy Empowered. Our goal is in elementary school for our students to be able to read by 3rd grade, and then continue that progression all the way up until high school to a point where they're able to be successful going into a career or going into college.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Heather?
During the first year, how might you go about determining the strengths and weaknesses of our school district, and what specific steps would you take?
So in the folder that I handed you is a draft entry plan, and it's an outline, just because as I learn more about the district and meet with the individual board members, the staff, meet with teachers and administrators, and we'll be able to refine this entry plan. But initially, the way I would go about the first year is, and you see my transition goals, assess the strengths and weaknesses of the district's central office departments. How is central office supporting every campus throughout the district? Assess the strengths and weaknesses of the district's performance management system. From what I understand, we do have achievement gaps within the district, and so how are we using data systems to inform the support that central office is providing all of our campuses? How are we differentiating that support to the campuses? Because if we're about equity, that means that we're not applying the same support to every campus based on the needs of the kids and the families within all those schools and communities. Assess the district's current political landscape, and so what more do I need to know in order to support the board, support the district, in order to move the district forward. In addition to that, establish a positive superintendent and board relationship would be part of my goals. Establish positive working relationships with all the administrators, teachers, and support staff, and establish positive relationships with community and key partners.
Thank you. What have you done to be able to increase the involvement of parents from different groups in the educational outcomes of their students?
So currently, in the majority of the campuses that I support, we have a wraparound specialist. The wraparound specialist is intended to connect the school with social services that currently exist within the city of Houston, but also within the neighborhoods that the campuses currently reside. We also have a FACE, Family and Community Engagement representative, for our campuses to connect, again, our families with the communities and the resources that are available in the community. As you can imagine, with us dealing with Harvey this year, we had a lot of displaced families, which required us finding homes. We are a district of choice, and so that required us to look at how we allow kids to move between campuses. But also recognizing the importance of attendance. And so if a student's on the south side of Houston but wants to go to a school on the north side, it wouldn't really make sense That FACE and the wraparound specialists really help support identifying how best to serve all the families within the schools I support.
Okay. What has been your success as a school leader in partnering with higher education and the business community? Please mention the partnerships that have developed as a result of your leadership.
So I'll start with my experience in Chicago. The schools that I supported when I was a deputy chief were in the south side of Chicago, in the area around the University of Chicago. And so the University of Chicago was a partner with my schools in how we integrated technology in our campuses, but also very smart kids go to the University of Chicago. And so there were opportunities for us to bring those students into our schools as tutors during the day and then after school. In Houston, again, because the schools that I support are throughout the entire city, there are a lot of opportunities for us to have partnerships with the universities in the city. And so we have partnerships with University of Houston, Texas Southern University, Prairie View University, which allows us to differentiate the support that each school receives based on their needs. And so the schools that are around the University of Houston receive a lot of support around, again, the family, community support with dealing with homelessness, drug addiction, and some of the other issues that the Third Ward represents in Houston. But then also, there's been a big push within the Third Ward to increase the number of health facilities in schools, and so being able to provide clinics in our high schools, and we're currently looking at possibly putting some clinics in our middle schools to support our students and families with health care.
Number 5, what has been your experience in determining both short and long-range district goals, and who should be involved in that planning?
And so because I am currently supporting our lowest performing campuses, we establish very aggressive goals. The goal is for all of our schools, we call them IR, improvement required, for all of our schools not to be improvement required this upcoming school year. And what that entailed was, it started with the board. And so the board established their goals for the superintendent, and what we did then was meet with principals, my team, and then each school developed goals that would impact the goals that the board created. The way the board created their goals was based off of community input, based on what the state expectations were, but then sometimes state expectations are lower than we would like. And so, I think we were very aggressive in how we approached establishing district-wide goals to surpass the expectations for the state. And so for the 34 schools that I support, again, we were very aggressive to identify how we're going to move campuses past the state expectations for performance, and not necessarily meet the bare minimum, but get to the state where our kids are in Houston, we call it a masters. We want all our kids to master content on the state test.
You've said a little bit about this, but what experience have you had in working within the community of diverse elements, specifically socioeconomical and education levels, also culture, race, and ethnicity. Thank you. So, I mean, if you could focus on some of the socioeconomic and educational level differences that you find within the community and how you work with that.
Absolutely. And so, again, my 34 schools, and again, in the larger packet on the third page, it gives you a representation of the 26,000 students that I support. And so out of the 26,000 students I support, 16 out of the 34 are predominantly African American. 17 out of 34 are predominantly Hispanic. 32 out of 34, nearly 8 out of those 10 students are economically disadvantaged. 31 out of the 34 campuses, and 7 out of 10 students are at risk. 15 out of the 34 campuses, 1 in 3 students are ELL. And so I say all that, and I provided this for you because we recognized last year when we were developing Achieve 180 that there was a need for training around cultural competency. And so I know that you've engaged in that as far as being culturally responsive, but outside of being responsive, what we recognized was a need for our teachers, our school leaders, to understand what their implicit and explicit biases were. And so we've engaged in training throughout the school year with our school leaders and teachers around implicit and explicit bias and how that impacts how we deliver curriculum, how we interact with teachers, how teachers interact with students, and then how our teachers and school leaders interact with the families that we serve. If we don't acknowledge that through that type of training, then we continue to reinforce this prison to pipeline type of system where we don't necessarily recognize when students are misbehaving, that it's not necessarily because that they're acting out against you. It's, do we really understand their circumstance? Do we really understand their family situation? Have we done the extra work or gone the extra mile to really understand why they are coming to us angry? It may be an issue, and this goes back again to being culturally responsive, culturally relevant pedagogy. You may have a kid come in the school who just didn't get to eat breakfast, or witnessed their father and mother get arrested, or someone died, or their house burned down. Those are extreme cases, but these are some of the issues that our students deal with throughout the school year, both in Houston and I'm sure here in this district. And so being culturally relevant goes just beyond a PD. We have to address the adults. It's not about, it's the kids are who they are. It's the adults that we put in front of our kids that we need to change.
All right, thank you. Yep.
Oh, it's my turn again, sorry. As superintendent, what would be your role in the budgetary process? And please specify.
So currently, outside of facilities, nutrition, I manage a budget of approximately $240 million for the 34 schools that I support. And so the budget process and then the way our budgetary model is, it's a modified per unit allocation based on assigned weights for the different programs at all of our schools. And so we go through a budgeting process where each principal is responsible for, and we're decentralized also. And so principals first are responsible for creating their budget, and then they meet with their principal supervisors. Those are the people that are on my team to review those budgets, and then based on how they've allocated those funds, the final approval comes through me, and then we go up to cabinet to then do a review of all the areas and schools that have submitted budgets to make sure that they're balanced.
If I can just interrupt, we have 3 minutes left.
For 25 minutes.
In the 25, yeah, yeah, we're fine, we're on time.
Okay. How would you handle decisions that are unpopular with the public, but educationally or financially necessary? And please cite actual examples.
So, real life example right now, in Houston, we're dealing with a significant budget shortfall in excess of $100 million. And so that requires some unpopular decisions, which requires us to reduce our force, our teaching force, and administrative force. And so what it comes down to is we have to do what's best for kids, and if we don't sacrifice our educational program, and we're still able to deliver a high quality product in the classroom. Again, by not impacting kids, I think that that's a good reason to make changes in the best interest of kids.
Okay. How would you ensure that services are provided for gifted and talented special education, career and technology, ELL, and visual and performing arts students? Give 2 examples of where you have developed programs to support 2 of these areas.
So I currently, in one of my high schools and a middle school that feeds into this high school, we've identified making those schools IB for going into next year. And the reason why is we did a review of all the programs in the city, and we had these program deserts where we didn't have any magnet programs, we didn't have any gifted programs, and that's where we were putting all of our kids that required special ed services. And so we are being very proactive in making things equitable across the entire city of Houston. The way I would approach it in this district is, again, we have to look at, where are all the programs from the east all the way to the west of the district, and are they divided upon, are they equitable? And are they programs that the communities want in their neighborhoods? Again, we have to go back to the parents who are providing us with the tax dollars and use those funds in an appropriate way. But again, it goes back to what's best for our kids and communities.
All right, number 10. Describe your beliefs about student discipline and safety.
So I think student discipline is a direct correlation to the quality of teaching that they're being exposed to. We do have extremes. However, I think all students want to come to school and have a good experience. They want their teacher to like them. And so the way I've approached it, from being a principal, from being a teacher to being a principal to my current position, is how can we improve Tier 1 instruction? When we don't address first-time instruction, and then we also have to look at data by school, by area. When are these infractions occurring during the school day? Are they occurring in a particular school? Are they occurring with particular teachers? And then we need to do a deep dive around it. And so I believe we address discipline through ensuring that we have a system to deal with unwanted behaviors, but we also look at how we support our teachers and school leaders with delivering high-quality Tier 1 instruction.
If you could, give us some specific ideas of how you would judge your own effectiveness as a superintendent and how the board should evaluate your work, and maybe give some examples of how you've judged it in the past.
And so the ultimate judgment would be student performance. Again, I know we have significant achievement gaps, and so I believe that would have to be an area that we would have to look at as far as, are we closing gaps over time. Another issue would be how are we identifying school leaders and teachers for the schools that are serving our students and families. Another area that I would want to be evaluated on is culture and climate. I don't know if the district currently does a culture and climate survey for school leaders, for teachers, for students and their parents, but if we haven't, I think we need to have a baseline of where we are, and then a year later, 3 years later, compare that baseline data to how the community is feeling about their school. If we have parents that have taken their kids out of the district, have we attracted them back into the district? Do we do exit surveys? And so I think there are a lot of, outside of student performance, I think there are other ways to evaluate my effectiveness, my ability to bring in partnerships for the district. Am I reaching out to the community, our business partners? How are we bringing additional funding to support the many programs that the district currently has? Again, when we address the achievement gap, it's often about the opportunities that we aren't providing students. And so with this additional funding, could possibly be applied to assist with decreasing, eliminating the achievement gap.
Did you ask that one? Is it your turn?
Thanks.
Oh. What do standardized test scores tell us and not tell us about a school district? How can you ensure that ELL and FRL students can perform to the best of their abilities?
So the test tells us how students are performing at that particular time in the school year. It's a snapshot. However, we also need systems within the district to identify how our students are performing throughout the school year. But what we often miss about standardized test scores, assessments is, especially during the school year, it's a picture into how we're teaching. And so when kids don't get content, we can't blame them. We have to look at the adults who are responsible for those students. And so if we have a significant percentage of ELL students aren't performing, we can't blame them. We have to look at what type of services are they receiving. Who are the teachers that are in front of them? How are they doing? How are we evaluating them throughout the school year? Do we have a reliable system to assess, evaluate teachers and school leaders on their performance? The way you ensure quality instruction for our ELL and, what was the other term, FRL students.
Economically disadvantaged.
Oh.
Free and reduced lunch.
Is by looking at the teachers that we put in front of them, but then also the data points throughout the school year that are an indicator as to, are we being effective with the academic program that we're providing them during the school year.
What are the key components of a successful curriculum and instructional program in a district, and how do you get each site involved in that effort? Each site, each campus?
And so the effectiveness is as good as students perform. And so there is no secret sauce in a sense, where we can purchase a curriculum, design a curriculum. However, if we don't have quality PD for the school leaders who are supposed to be going into classrooms, evaluating teacher performance, then we fail. If we don't have quality PD to train teachers, to build their capacity, then we fail. We just can't stick a curriculum in a classroom and expect it to work without supporting, ongoing support to our school leaders and to our teachers until we've built that capacity around whatever content area we're attempting to improve for our kids.
Just want to check in with our chair. Are we good on time?
Yeah, we're plenty of
Okay,
time.
okay. Thanks. How do you provide the oversight and lead others who have direct responsibilities in a district this size? Specifically, how do you hold others accountable for delivering the mission of the district?
And so the way I'm currently organized is I have a team of, we call them school support officers. They're basically principal supervisors. Each principal supervisor has a group of schools that then they are responsible for, and so each principal has a direct supervisor that they report to. The principal supervisor then is responsible for doing more frequent site visits than I'm able to do because of the 34 campuses. And then they're the ones walking classrooms with the principal. They're the ones looking at teacher data. When I say teacher data, when we go in and do teacher evaluations. And so how are teachers being rated by this principal? Does the rating match what we're actually seeing in the classroom? We're also looking, the principal supervisor is also looking at student level data. And so in conjunction with that teacher level data, along with student data, if we're rating the teacher really high, but then we see significant gaps, then there's a disconnect between how effective this teacher is and their impact on the kids that are in front of them. And then my support to campuses is around bringing the principal supervisors together, looking at teacher level data, looking at how they're going into schools and observing classrooms, what PD they're providing those school leaders and teachers, and then also looking at student level data and making course in school year adjustments to the types of supports that we are providing on those campuses. And then I also want to direct you to the page 4 where it says receiving feedback and providing differentiated support. These are 4 different ways I've structured the Achieve 180 area, where we have an area principal advisory committee. We have a Tier 2 leadership symposium. And what Tier 2 leadership is, we're looking at our APs, our deans of instructions, our instructional specialists, people that are on deck that could possibly be our future principals, and making sure that they're being trained around instructional rounds, the official instructional rounds, in order to be high-quality instructional leaders on potential campuses within the city. I also conduct data and strategy sessions. This is a type of performance management for our Achieve 180 area. And so principals sit with me and my team and report on data that we have up to that point of the school year. And then I also invite in different departments from the district. So I have curriculum, I have special ed, I have IET, I have multilingual sitting at the table as we're looking at their data and identifying support that the central office could provide these schools in order to help them meet standard this school year. And then we also have content enhancement series. We call it ACE, so Achieve 180 Content Enhancement Series, where as we get data throughout the school year, in collaboration with the curriculum team, we design specific PD for our teachers, 3rd through 12th grade, and bring them to different sites throughout the city to give them additional training on upcoming standards that we think are difficult, or standards that the students didn't perform very well, because we believe the students didn't perform very well. That means we didn't teach it as well as we could. And so we basically do a reteach with our teachers around how they should go about ensuring that kids master these standards based on the TEKS.
Thank you. There's one last question, which is, do you have questions for the board? But before we get to that, I wanted to follow up on 13 real quickly. We are in the midst of revising a technology curriculum and technology-based enhanced curriculum. Tell me what your experience has been with technology in the classroom and how you would judge or evaluate a program like that.
And so all 9 of my high schools are Power Up, and what that means is all of our we're one-to-one district for our high schools. And so every high school student has a laptop that they take home every day, and we push curriculum and content through our website where students have access to the programs through their laptops. And I think the way you evaluate it, because again, I have some struggling schools that are diverse, but some of them are predominantly African American or Hispanic. And so what we have found is just based on the neighborhood, the school, sometimes our students are struggling with bringing laptops home. Some laptops are being stolen. And when they don't bring them back to school, that hinders the teacher's ability to be as effective as they possibly could be. And so I think the way I would evaluate it is, how can we be more effective through more of a blended learning solution, where, if we go one-to-one, how do we balance that? If that's an issue for our campuses where kids aren't bringing their devices to school, that shouldn't be used as an excuse, or that shouldn't hinder a teacher's ability to teach a lesson just because a kid doesn't have their device.
All right, thank you. So I guess the last formal question is, what questions do you have for this board that you would like to have answered here tonight?
Sure. And so my first question is, if we have families that are taking their children out of the district, what does the board believe we need to do to attract families back to the district?
So we have about 1/3 of our families, of our potential students, go to other districts. So a significant piece have chosen to take their kids elsewhere. That's what competition does. And what we have found, there have been some studies that have shown why parents go to a different district or go to a charter district, which is also a public school, within the framework of Minnesota. And we have found that for charter schools, it is absolutely the curriculum and performance, followed closely by safety. For other districts, it's convenience, followed by safety and performance. So the biggest deal is the performance and the curriculum offered to the students. And that is something that we have researched fairly recently, and it is something that in a competitive environment, you absolutely have to get a handle on and how to attract those families back to the district.
Thank you. What support or PD have administrators or teachers requested to support our struggling students?
Say that again?
What support or centralized support or what PD have our school leaders, principals, APs, and teachers requested to support our struggling students?
I don't know if any of us can give you the details at the school level, but there have been several programs. National Urban Alliance is currently doing a summer institute and ongoing support from cultural competency within the schools, and several teachers ask for that. We have ongoing training around behavior intervention and how do we do restorative practices and focus on what's the issue with the child and not just punishment. So there have been quite a bit of professional development around that over the last year or two. So those are some of the two big areas that come to mind when it comes to what people have been asking for or what we've recently implemented. And Jim or Jessica, if you have any other inputs from the last couple of years.
Those are kind of the highlights, improving cultural competency and how to connect better with students has been a desire, I believe, for our teachers.
Okay, anyone else? All right.
Time for one more?
Yeah, keep going. No, you have about another 10 minutes if you
10
want to
minutes?
take it.
Okay,
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely.
So we've discussed the achievement gap. So what resources has the district allocated to the campuses that have struggled to close those gaps?
I think it's various. I mean, there's different instructional coaches. We have a full achievement and integration Minnesota plan that on top of what we're doing on a day-to-day basis is about another $4.5 million of investment. There are different class sizes where principals are allowed with some of the integration dollars that are out there to do what they feel best in their particular schools. So it could be technology, it could be ESPs, it could be smaller class sizes. So we push a lot down to the principal level to better understand what needs to be done in those schools. And we get what we call compensatory dollars from the state. So the state's funding the majority, or about 60-some% of the cost of education. And they do understand that different schools, different demographics, mainly around ELL and FRL, need differentiated support. So there is additional support available for that. Again, the district has takes a lead in how that's distributed, but also at the school level, individual principals can focus on what is best for their students.
That was my last question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Does anyone else have any other questions?
What attracted you initially to come to Osseo?
So, size is very similar to the size of not my district, but the current schools that I support. The area. This is the area where I would raise my family. And then more importantly, you're dealing with some issues that I think that I currently have a skill set and have demonstrated success both in Chicago and currently in Houston to deal with. Do I have the answer to solve the issues in this district? No. However, I have demonstrated an ability to bring a team together, work collaboratively with district staff, families, and the community with identifying solutions to the problems that the achievement gap is, typically characterized by. And so it's this district is almost like the perfect storm for me as far as it really being a district of choice. And it doesn't hurt that it's much closer to Chicago and Indianapolis than Houston.
Okay.
I had one more.
okay.
I remember what it was now. Can you talk a little bit how your partnership with the District of Houston is with your Achieve 180 district? Can you talk how that kind of works together?
And so back in January of 2016, we were tasked with developing a plan for our underserved and underperforming campuses. And so it took us from January up until the board voted on it, believe in May, to develop the plan to support the campuses. And so it wasn't just a team of area soups in a room that developed the plan. We had many iterations of the plan where we brought it to the board, got feedback from the board. The plan was attached to a certain dollar amount to support the campuses and this plan, and it was really just a really streamlined collaboration between the district staff and the board with developing the Achieve 180 plan. The one thing about the Houston board is they are very passionate about equity and ensuring that the schools get the support they need to match the level of performance of our more affluent areas in the city. And so it was really a collaborative effort beginning back in January of 2016.
And then it was implemented in the fall of 17 or 16?
Yes.
Okay.
And so we actually started with the initial training around cultural competence, and we call it our professional learning series. So it's a 2-week period where we bring our school leaders and their teams in for 2 weeks of training, and we actually started that training in that development 2 weeks prior to our kids coming into school. And then in conjunction with that, our weekly PDs. And so every campus in Achieve 180 has professional development once a week that is centrally designed by the district and then delivered in all of our campuses every Wednesday this year.
Okay, so follow-up question to that, it's kind of two. Was there community input for that program to be implemented? And then was there pressure from the state to do something like that, or was it kind of a district decision to do that to help those children?
And so we got a push from the state.
Okay.
And so I have the 34 Achieve 180 campuses, and then there's another area soup that has 10 superintendent schools. And these are the schools that are IR4 and above. And based on a House bill and a Senate bill in the state of Texas, once you get to a certain level of IR status, that requires the commissioner in Texas to either replace the board or close schools. And so that was an incentive and a push on our district to get a plan together to serve both our superintendent schools and our Achieve 180 campuses.
So you've had about 1 year, not even, 1 year, right?
Right.
Okay.
Not even a year
I'm
yet.
not going to ask you any data questions, because I get that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy the storm. He's from Chicago.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, our next candidate is scheduled to come in at 6 o'clock. So for the next 10 minutes, if we could take your time to either go through your notes, write those down, do whatever else you may need, but we will start again at 6 o'clock. And the audience members, please take your time to fill out the cards. Appreciate your feedback, and pass those over when you're done. So thank you. So I will actually call a recess to this meeting so that we can go up and take care of things, and so we will come back at 6 o'clock. they ready back there? No, in the room. To turn the audio back on.
Oh, yeah, they'll be.
Okay, all right. Okay. All right, let's come back to order, please. It is 6 o'clock, and we're going on to our second interview of the evening, and that is with Dr. Mark Schaefer. Greg?
Chair Ostafi, members of the board, members of the community, administrators, faculty, students, it's my pleasure to introduce your second candidate tonight, Dr. Mark Schaefer.
You are coming from snowy climes, so this hasn't chased you away, I hope.
No, not too bad.
So what we wanted to go through is about 15 standardized questions tonight in about 50 minutes. So figure your timing for some of the answers, delve deep in some, not as much in others. And if you wanted to start off with a brief introduction of yourself with the statement if you want. If not, we can get into the questions.
Sure. Well, good evening, and thank you so much for considering me for your next superintendent here in Osseo. Deeply humbled and honored. My name is Mark Schaefer. This is very exciting for me. I am currently serving as an assistant superintendent of school leadership in Boulder, Colorado. I would say my influences, though, really come from the three most important people in my life. Those are, I would say, my three parents: my mom, my dad, and my grandmother. My mom, college educated. She was a high school teacher. What I learned from my mom were the values of tenacity, grit, hard work. My dad, not college educated. He was a small business owner, retail. Human resource skills from him. I learned values of being a good listener, being a people person. And my grandmother, a highly animated woman. She was awesome. I learned from her the traditions of community and family. I channel the three of them all the time. They are a big part of who I am today. My background, like I said, has always been in public education. I'm really, really excited to be here, and again, thank you so much for giving me time.
All right, thank you. Start with the first question. If you could, please provide some specific examples of how you have promoted educational programs utilizing your communication and public relations skills.
So most recently, I'm really proud of our visioning work that we've done in Boulder Valley School District around career and technical education. We've taken the last 2 years to do some deep study around best-in-class, world-class exemplars with career tech ed. Our career tech ed programs really in Boulder have not been updated since the 1950s, so huge opportunity, lots of opportunity there. What was most exciting about this was really the engagement of stakeholders. We really took the time, worked not only with staff and community members, but we engaged students, businesses, parents, really 360 degrees around. We did take our time. Again, 2 years of deep study and reflection. Culminated just a few months ago, our Board of Education generously approved funding to embark on exciting career tech ed programs for our 18-19 school year in Boulder Valley, and I saw that as just a huge victory, huge win for our students and for our community. I've also started a program, virtual learning, in Boulder Valley. We're a big district, 32,000 students. Our community, like Osseo, it stretches really from the mountains to our East County. And so our mountain schools have about 150 students in our high school. Our largest high schools have 2,000 students. And so really we have opportunities to make sure that our students that are in high schools of 150 have the same opportunities really as our students in larger high schools. So our virtual learning platform has allowed us to do that. Students have opportunities to access classes through the virtual learning platform. So a teacher who might be teaching a class in one high school, students could access that really from another high school. And that happens ubiquitously, so it doesn't necessarily have to be within school. Kids can access it really from their home as well. So it's expanding. We've started at our high schools and middle schools, looking to expand it this year to our elementaries as well. Really worked closely with our communities to onboard this. So again, in terms of communication, we work closely with parents, stakeholders, our students, teachers, and really our tech department to make sure that this was a program that we can successfully onboard.
All right, thank you. Heather?
Yes, can I actually ask a question about that first?
I'd like to get through these and we can follow up if we could.
Okay. During the first year, how might you go about determining the strengths and weaknesses of our school district? And what specific steps would you take?
So being a good leader is really about being a great listener. I think probably within my first 60 to 90 days, I'm really going to take the time to really get to know the district. And what that means is getting out into the communities, getting out and visiting each and every school, meeting with leaders, meeting with parents and stakeholders, meeting with business entities, meeting with local government, and spending time with each and every one of you. Really, I'm strengths-based leader, so it's really about what are we doing well and how do we improve upon that. Are there opportunities? Absolutely. There certainly are opportunities in every school district, but we're doing things really well, and certainly this district is no exception. And so again, taking the time to deeply understand, not a change agent, but I also recognize that if we just remain in stasis, we're not improving. And so I think there's always opportunities for improvement, but it's also really celebrating our successes. But it will take time. It will take time, again, to deeply understand the organization, and it will take time to spend. It's not a process that I'm going to rush, and so I really want to learn and explore and do some deep reflection before we embark and move forward. Specific steps I would take, again, would be spending time with all stakeholders, doing a lot of listening, and really deeply engaging with the community as well.
What have you done to be able to increase the involvement of parents from different groups in the educational outcomes of their students?
So, parents, as a parent, I have a daughter who's going to be in middle school next year, are deeply involved in their, and have deep interest in their child's education. We know that just because we don't hear from parents, that doesn't mean that they're not interested or they don't care. Certainly if there are concerns or problems, they're going to let us know, but sometimes they don't let us know. And so we need to be able to take temperature checks. We need to be able to find out from parents directly, how are things going? I have never really come upon a person that doesn't have an opinion about things, and so sometimes we just have to ask them. Sometimes we have to be proactive and really reach out directly. This means engaging them in surveys. It means being available and talking with them. It means going out into their communities to really gauge the effectiveness of what we're doing. Many within our communities do come forward. They regularly come to meetings. They are very involved in groups. They serve on advisories, and that's awesome. We want to encourage that. But we also want to give voice to those that might not be serving on these committees as well. And so we have to find and explore ways to engage them as well. We have in Boulder Valley about 30% of our population Latino. And this group has traditionally not come forward. This group has traditionally not been involved. They do have deep interest. They have deep commitments in the education of their children, but they haven't been very vocal. And so one group that we've started in our district is a group called Parity. Parity is an organization that works directly through our schools and basically teaches parents how to advocate. It teaches parents how to access schools and who to go to and how to seek out resources. And it has interactions with cabinet level individuals. So as the assistant superintendent, I meet with Parity. I meet with parent leaders and we talk through issues. They ask questions. What I love about this group is it's conducted entirely in Spanish, and even though I was a Spanish minor, can't speak it very well. So certainly some opportunities as a translator, but it's also very humbling too. It's kind of a culturally interesting experience where I'm in the minority. I need an interpreter to interpret what parents are saying to me. And it gives me perspective and vision as well on some of the things that they're dealing with when they interface with our schools. So those are some of the things that I would do.
Thank you.
What has been your success as a school leader in partnering with higher education and the business community? Please mention the partnerships that have developed as a result of your leadership.
So the one that I'm most excited about is a program called Lead Boulder. It is a student leadership partnership. So it's a partnership between the YMCA of Boulder Valley and CU Boulder and Boulder Valley School District. What we do is we've identified 30 juniors and take them on a 2-year trajectory of leadership. These are students that are from each of our high schools as well as our charter schools. We meet monthly with them, and then we expose them to various leaders and leadership strands within our community. 2-year program culminates in their senior year in a capstone project, so they give back then to our community. Community could be small c, it could be their schools, or big C, it could be a global community. But the students leverage a lot of their skills and the things that they've acquired through the program to give back. And it's really exciting because it does take a community effort. We work very closely with our community colleges. We offer concurrent enrollment in our schools. We work very closely with our business partnerships to offer our students apprenticeships and internships, certainly through career and tech ed, but we're expanding outside of career and tech ed as well. We want to give students real-world, real-life experiences, and Boulder, City of Boulder is right. Not only is it a college community, but a lot of tech industries are as well, so that's very, very exciting. Again, we work very closely not only with our community colleges, but I would say CU as well. We have teacher cadet programs. Students certainly work within the CU program works with our students in teacher training programs. What we really work on is this notion of this boomerang effect. What we want to do is be a world-class organization. We want students to really learn and develop through our programs. We want them to go on to higher education, and then we want them to return. We want them to return to our community and then give back. We do target minority populations as well. We really want to ensure that students are seeing students of color in classrooms so that they have role models in front of them. And so a lot of these programs that we have as well, which do work directly through the university, helps us to foster those partnerships and relationships. I will also say that another exciting partnership is something called a queer endeavor. It promotes diversity with gay, lesbian, transgender lifestyles, and it's through CU Boulder. We've worked on training with our administrative team and really with our schools as well. So lots and lots of partnerships with higher education.
Thank you. What has been your experience in determining both short and long-range district goals, and who should be involved in that planning?
So I'll start with the second part of that question, and that's everyone, and that's capital E, everyone. So short and long, again, we have a collective vested interest in the goals and priorities of our district. So everyone is our staff, our teachers, our parents, our students, our community leaders, higher education. And when I say staff, I mean all members of our staff. That would include our custodians, our bus drivers, our classified staff. And so we do want 360-degree involvement in the long-range and short-term planning of our district. This is a yearly endeavor. I know that Osseo does this, and we do this as well in Boulder Valley, but we are always revisiting our goals. We're taking a look, we're confirming with data, are we meeting our goals? Do we need to kick out of goals as we achieve them? Are we getting better each year? And so intimately involved in our strategic planning of our district. We have a yearly opportunity, and then we cultivate it. So we look at it we're always looking at it. It's always in front of us. We're relying on data to confirm what we're doing. And it's not just the leadership team that's myopic. So we want external eyes on it as well. We want people, partners, parents looking at this as well. Are we walking the talk? Are we doing what we're saying we're going to do?
Okay. You mentioned a little bit about this, but give me some details of the experiences you've had in working within a community of diverse elements, such as socioeconomic and educational levels, different cultures, race and ethnicity. Please explain in detail, but focus on some of the socioeconomic and educational level items.
So Boulder Valley and Osseo are very, very similar in that we have extraordinary wealth and we have extraordinary poverty and we have everything in between. We have highly educated population and we have first generation. Never really have not had much beyond a high school education, if that. And so that invites and welcomes opportunity because we want to make sure, we want to ensure that every child, we have equally high expectations that every child will be successful, all students will be college and career ready and community ready. And it's engaging with the community. So it's Osseo, like Boulder Valley, we are a network of communities. So we serve 9 communities in Boulder. And as a leader, you are the leader of all 9 communities. And all students are entitled to what we refer to as a guaranteed and viable curriculum, that every single child that attends our schools will have the same excellent opportunities. Our resources should not be barriers. They often are, and those are challenges, and there certainly are opportunities, but we want to make sure that we don't have and have-nots. Our parents keep us on our toes, and that's a good thing. We want parents to be our partners all the time. And again, I'm not as concerned with those parents that show up at all of our meetings. I'm more concerned about the parents that don't, because I'm deeply interested to know what they think as well. So they need to be welcomed. And sometimes we need to just go into their communities because they're not going to come into the district office. And so that's really, really important. And so being proactive and reaching out into communities and meeting in home schools or even meeting in other areas where it would be public venues, I think it's really important that we reach out and we engage all members of our community.
Thank you.
As superintendent, what would be your role in the budgetary process? Please specify.
So deeply involved, but again, like the other elements, as you'll see, or hopefully you're hearing with my leadership, it's all about a collaborative process. And so the budget process is really, really important because we need to be careful not to allow the loudest voices in the room, really to hijack those areas of the budget. There are equal priorities and relative weights, and so these require deep conversations and lots of voices and diverse perspectives. And so I love being challenged, and I love engaging in conversations that challenge my thinking. But budgetary conversations happen early and often, and they need to be kept in front of us because, quite honestly, we have limited resources. So we have to be very good stewards of public dollars, and we have to ensure that all dollars are aligned with our priorities. So as we look at our district priorities and our goals, are we spending it on the right things? And are we getting a good return on our investment? Because if we are doing things that are not getting good return on our investment, then we should stop doing that because money can be spent elsewhere. Budgetary process does require careful planning. It requires scaffolding. It requires us to be patient, that we don't necessarily we can stair step into things. We don't necessarily have to spend everything all at once. But the process needs to be ubiquitous and transparent, and it needs to involve all stakeholders.
All right, thank you.
How would you handle decisions that are unpopular with the public, but educationally or financially necessary? And please cite examples.
So that's tough because I'm a pleaser and I love equilibrium. So we love to make everyone happy, and that's not always possible. And so I think a lot of this is just based on trust and being human. And so we will need to learn how to agree to disagree. And part of that is, again, just building trust and credibility. And if I'm a successful leader, then that's what I'll have. And so if we're able to if I'm a good listener, and I invite discourse and opinion, and if at the end of the day we agree to disagree, but if you feel that your voice was heard and your opinion was valued, hopefully we can walk away. Now, the STEM in this question is really, really important because it's educationally and or financially necessary. So we make decisions in the best interest of kids. And again, always, that every dollar that's spent and every decision that's made is always what's in the best interest of our students. But we also want to make sure that we're taking care of our staff, all staff. We want to make sure that we're serving our community in a responsible way as well. So specific examples or actual examples, lots of them, lots of unpopular decisions that, not too many, but so we have been wrestling with detracking in our middle schools. And so we've had honors classes for advanced language arts at our middle schools. And we have 9 middle schools. And so at some of our middle schools, it doesn't exist. It's all homogeneous or actually heterogeneous grouping. That is, that students are completely mixed and teachers differentiate. At other middle schools, it is done by grouping, and so students are placed in honors or on-level classes. One of my principals last year embarked on a journey to detrack the middle school, did engage stakeholders. A smaller group of parents pushed back, really questioning the process, concerned that their voices weren't heard or honored. And it got into interesting conversations, which actually got into the boardroom as well. At the end of the day, we did work closely with the parent community. We relied on data, so we're actually looking at that data right now to confirm that what we're doing is actually not quote unquote hurting children, but certainly providing a good education for them. Parents really, at the end of the day, want what's best for their kids. And whether we're tracking or not, I mean, if their students are getting a strong education and they're learning a lot and being challenged, that's really what's most important, and data confirms that. And so how does data confirm that? I mean, not only by standardized test scores, but also are these students, as they matriculate into high school, are they also getting into honors classes, are they performing as well, et cetera. So not the most popular decision among one of our, like a smaller group of parents, but we're currently navigating that and trying to rebuild trust among those that were not happy about that decision.
Thanks. How would you ensure that services are provided for gifted and talented, special education, career and technology, ELL, and visual and performing arts students? Give 2 examples of where you have developed programs to support 2 of these areas.
So all groups of students are super important, whether we're talking about our gifted students, career tech ed, special education. So we want to make sure that all programs are done with efficacy and fidelity, that we have best-in-class instruction, that is that the teachers that are in front of these groups of students are outstanding, that we're providing curricula and programs that meet their needs. And so what we do again is, we rely on data to confirm that the programs that we're offering are in fact meeting the needs of these students. Beyond that, we can survey, we can ask parents and students about their experiences and be open, be reflective in terms of the feedback that we receive. I shared with you my current technical education example, so that was good. Gifted and talented, so we have, it's called TAG in my district, and so we have TAG-centered programs at some of our elementary and middle level. And so these are programs that we grow and develop. Part of it is providing FTE and making sure that we have adequate staffing. Part of it is serving as a magnet, or drawing students to these programs, doing a high level of promoting. And part of it is ensuring that the programs that we're offering are the very best. Another program that we started this year is a biliteracy program. State of Colorado has a seal of biliteracy that the high school students can earn on their diploma as they matriculate. But that biliteracy program actually starts back in elementary school. And so students are immersed in both English and Spanish classes and core courses as well. It has only really existed at elementary and middle, but we've now onboarded a second middle level program, and now I'm looking at creating a trajectory through high school. And so these biliteracy programs, it transcends the AP/IB curricula, which tends to be more programmatic, and it's really getting into core. So arguably the courses that are AP, they're rigorous, they're great, they're college bound, but they're not really biliteracy programs, and so it's really offering those within core content. So we're working with 2 of our high schools right now to create that programming as students who are in the current pipeline will be able to enjoy that.
Describe your beliefs about student discipline and safety.
So being a former dean of students and a middle school assistant principal and principal, I've had experience with student discipline. I would say I am a complete and strong proponent of restorative justice. And so it's really working with students to have them see all opportunities of learning experiences. And so we want them to learn from the mistakes that they make, and we want to be able to get them back into a positive trajectory. And that could be rebuilding relationships with teachers, with their peers in their classes, even if they do something which is maybe really bad choices like breaking the law. Again, providing opportunities to reintegrate back into the schools. And so, again, it's not the severity of the consequence. It's really how meaningful the quote-unquote consequences. We really want students to learn from their mistakes. They're children, and whether they're in kindergarten or they're seniors, we don't want the mistakes that they might make as children to impact them throughout their career as a student. And really, the danger is that if we're not supportive of them while they're in school, then we fail them. And so we really need that opportunity to support students continuously, and that's why I'm a huge proponent of restorative discipline, restorative justice. Safety. Student safety is really important. I know this district works really, really hard. I know there was a recent, had opportunities to watch some of your Board of Education meetings, so I know you recently had a presentation by your Director of Safety and Security. So that is front and center, as it should be. We're in very challenging times. We want to ensure that students have nothing to worry about other than their schoolwork. We really don't want them to, we want them to be in the safest type of environments. And so that is a huge commitment, and we can't compromise on safety of students. It's not only physical safety, but emotional safety as well. So we want to make sure that we're attending to their emotional needs, making sure we have counselors that are available to meet with students, SEL programs, curricula. Again, I think these are areas that this district does extremely well.
Thank you. If you can, give us some specific ideas of how you would judge your own effectiveness as a superintendent and how the board should evaluate your work.
So I am, it's the halo effect, right? So we always think that we're doing a great job. But I think that really the best gauge, the best barometer is to ask and to seek feedback, and to seek feedback from all stakeholders, especially as a superintendent. And so I would do frequent checks with the community to ensure that we're meeting our goals and priorities as a district, and that as a superintendent, I'm meeting my goals and priorities. As my bosses, the school board, I would be in contact with you. We would hopefully create a growth plan for me so that with benchmarks of progress. And so what are the goals? And we would have check-ins, periodic check-ins to ensure that I'm meeting each of these benchmarks effectively. I'm a reflective practitioner, so I'm hungry for feedback always, and I'm always looking for it. I'm quick to give praise, but I'm not as comfortable receiving it, and so I'm much better, getting the feedback. I know people in our community will be quick to give feedback when they're not happy or pleased about things, but sometimes we have to seek that out as well, because again, I know that it's a big school district and a lot of communities, and so we need to explore ways that we can get that feedback on an ongoing basis from the community. And then beyond the feedback, are we being reactive and responsive to the feedback? You can give me feedback all day, but if we're not seeing any change or improvement, then that would be a concern as well. So again, benchmarking progress, making sure that we're hitting what the priorities are of the board.
Thank you.
What do standardized test scores tell us and not tell us about a school district? How can you ensure that ELL and FRL students can perform to the best of their abilities? FRL is free and reduced lunch.
So standardized test scores are one measurement, one data point. It's interesting, in Boulder, we are a fairly liberal community, and so our state legislature makes opt-outs for testing possible. And I know the first year that they had opt-outs for standardized testing, we had one student in our school of 2,100 students who actually took the standardized test while the other students picketed. So that's Boulder, Colorado. So am I a fan of standardized test scores or tests? To the extent that it provides us data, absolutely. And so I think that is one piece of data that we certainly can use to reflect on our practices. It provides some comparative data, not only between and among our own schools and students, but will also provide some state and national benchmark data as well, so that's helpful. So one thing that standardized test scores does tell us, again, is some comparison. How are we doing? It also provides feedback about the individual student. How is the student progressing as he or she matriculates through the system? And again, against some standards and norms. And so that's helpful as well. In review of data, and again, Osseo, like Boulder, certainly has opportunities when it comes to standardized test scores with our achievement gap. So we have those students who are not meeting, grade growth goals, are not meeting standards and expectations. And so standardized test scores does show us that. It also reminds us every year, it's a groundhog, that they continue to, show those opportunities. And so that's not okay. And so what we can use standardized test scores to do is confirm that if what we're doing is showing improvement, then that's good, that's positive. And if we're not showing improvement, and if it's the same growth gap, same achievement gap, same groups of students, then we ought to approach it differently. And so when we look at free and reduced lunch students, ELL, I would also say other socioeconomic indicators, certainly it's not okay to say, well, those students will just historically have not been successful, so therefore they won't be successful. It's that reminder that we need to and have to do better. And raise continue to raise the ceiling, but raise the ground as well to ensure that all students are meeting, exceeding all standards.
What are the key components of a successful curriculum and instructional program in a district, and how do you get each site involved in the effort?
So this district is doing some phenomenal things around curriculum and instruction, and it's really around student agency and choice, allowing students to be actively involved in the program, in the curriculum and in the instruction. The most effective programs are those that are highly relevant to and for students. And so they move well beyond the compliance. Our students are really good at quote unquote jumping through the proverbial hoops. But what we really need them to do is to be independent and higher level thinkers. And we need them to think non-linearly. And we need to be able to provide them to not memorize or regurgitate facts. And so curriculum instructional programs need to be responsive to that. They need to be high interest, high value, highly relevant. It needs to transcend the classroom experiences so that students can cross-apply what they're learning, cross-content, cross-curricular, and take it out into the real world. And again, allow student agency and choice. Students need to be able to control their destiny and be able to demonstrate knowledge in a variety of ways. So it's not just paper and pencil tests, but students can certainly demonstrate their knowledge and in a multitude of ways, and let them tell us that. And what does that take? It takes courage on the part of teachers and staff to allow that to happen. As a former teacher, I love to have the knowledge, and I love to be able to share that knowledge. But it takes more courage to allow students to show us what they can do, not tell them what they need to be doing. And then the second part of that question is, how do you get each site involved in the effort? It's everyone's responsibility. So that would be our schools, it would be our students, it would be our parents, community members. Curriculum instruction is vital. And so we want to make sure that what is being presented to our students and what students are doing in the classrooms are best in class, that it's a curriculum that is, again, relevant and engaging, and that all teachers and students and parents have a say in it.
Thank you.
How do you provide the oversight and lead others who have direct responsibilities in a district this size? Specifically, how do you hold others accountable for delivering the mission of the district?
So I think first and foremost, it's being highly visible as a leader. And so it's spending as much time as I can not at the district office. And so what that means is getting out into schools. I know currently in my role, I'm in schools as much as I can be, and that's 3 days a week. And why? Because that's where the action is. And when I'm not in schools, I'm out in the community as well. And so I think being highly visible is important, and it's not just doing the parade on the first day of school and then coming in and speaking at graduation, but it's really the stuff that happens in between as well. I believe in servant leadership, so I believe in empowering others so that they can do the very best. And so I know there's very, very talented leadership here in the district, from our building principals to cabinet level individuals. And so it's really empowering them to make decisions, not micromanaging. It's being available for them and with them. It's being a thought partner. It's really about challenging assumptions and really having those engaging conversations. I love working with my principals. I meet with them. We take learning walks in their buildings. We don't sit in their office and talk business. We talk instruction, and we do learning walks. And I would love to continue doing that as a superintendent as well. But again, in a district this size, I know as a superintendent, I know what I'm signing up for. This is not a 9-to-5 job. The day starts early and ends very late. But I love it. I thrive on it. I'm a people person. And again, I derive a lot of strength and satisfaction from helping others be successful and be able to do the best jobs that they can.
Okay.
You know what, I didn't get to the how do you hold others accountable for delivering the mission of the district. So accountability, it does not have to be a negative word. Again, when we hear the word accountability, it's has some kind of a negative connotation. It's a positive accountability. It's really ensuring that we're being successful, and success is measured in lots of different ways. It's not just around test scores. It is around parent satisfaction, student satisfaction, teacher satisfaction and efficacy. How are we meeting the goals? We have our school improvement plans, and so that certainly is something that I meet with and visit with my principals 3 times a year. We take a look at it and we talk through it. It's deeply understanding what are the goals of each person that I work with, certainly a cabinet. I would hope, in my working relationship with the Board of Education that, we would partner together. We would be a team of, we're 6 and then soon to be a team of 7. And so having that opportunity to, again, work and make sure that we're holding each other accountable for our successes.
Thank you. And I think before we get to the final question, which is what questions do you have for the board, we did ask one question earlier, which was about, tell us about your work with any type of technology instruction, specifically around some of the work that we've been doing, Digital Learning for All, and how, what experience you have with that, with technology supporting curriculum. And you did mention some of that earlier, and that may go to one of your questions you may have had, so I wanted to touch on that.
So beyond the virtual classrooms, we have what's called a one-to-web program in Boulder Valley, and really all of our secondary schools, with the exception of 2 right now, have one-to-one access, and so devices are provided for each student, and we call it one-to-web. Some schools have a bring-your-own-device initiative, but most we provide for. And we're piloting now, bringing that into the lower grades as well. So some of my experiences have been with the onboarding of that and the incorporating of that into the curricula. A lot of professional development goes into that as well, building capacity with our teachers and staff. Like I said, I did mention virtual classrooms, but we also do a lot around just teaching digital citizenship, which I know is something that is a huge priority in this district as well. Again, something that is the flavor of the month right now in Boulder is this web filters. So I'm becoming an expert now on web filters, and there's not a foolproof way to, ubiquitously protect students, but we can't give up. We always have to be looking for the next and best way to do that, and it does transcend the digital citizenry, because we, again, need to be able to protect our students, especially at our lower grades. So that's something that we're working on too.
Thank you. Did that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks. So right now, I guess, number 15 is, what questions do you have for the board? What can we answer for you?
So I guess my first question would be, so as a member of the Board of Education, you serve a term, and what would you hope would be your individual legacy? So as a member of the Board of Education during your term, your service to the district, what before your term expires, what do you see as, what would you hope for your legacy?
Start with our senior member of the board.
That I supported the goals and missions of the district to achieve its objectives, and also that I'm not in the newspaper. I just want to be behind the scenes and make sure that everything happens.
Who else wants to address that? Everyone.
I'll address it. It's difficult. I'm a firm believer that the education should be nonpartisan. I believe there's a fine line between indoctrination and education. We need to teach our children to be independent thinkers, to think critically, not just feed them what they should know, but help them to understand what they should know. And that goes in line with our teachers. I don't want to simply indoctrinate our teachers. I want our teachers to be independent thinkers. And it's difficult. We don't always agree on things. Our community has a wide spectrum of opinions. But I hope my own personal legacy is to ensure that while we don't always agree, we can all understand that we're here for our kids. It's very personal for me. I have children in the district, and I want them to have the best experience possible at every level in our system. So I don't know, that's it. Thank you.
I guess for me, I am a teacher in a different district, so I would like to be able to bring things from the district that I work in that work and hopefully help this district learn different ways to implement ways to reduce the achievement gap or opportunity. I also like to kind of stay behind the scenes as much as possible, but to make the right decisions and that directly affect the taxpayers of our district. That's really important to me, so to make sure that we're implementing programs that work and that have been proven to work and that the data shows that they're working, to continue with those programs, and if they're not working, then maybe we need to get rid of them and look at other ways to do things.
Okay. Similar to what Jessica said is that there are a humongous variety of differences of opinion and trains of thought. And I would like to, like Jim, also stay out of the newspaper. But I know that being a parent of children in this district, I am really, really invested in it. And I would like to see changes throughout our district. I grew up in this district. My parents grew up in this district, and things have been the same for a long time. And I would really like to see a lot more flexibility with how our students learn. I want to see them outside more. I want to see them getting more time to get out of their desks and learn in a different way, especially because we have so many different types of learners. I was really struck by what you said about the one student that took the test. I can't even imagine that happening here. But I would like it to be easier for our students who are not good test takers to be able to take these tests in a different way and have their skills measured differently, but so that we can still measure them. Because a lot of parents, their reason for opting out is because of how it will affect their child. So that really, really struck me as a surprise. So I would like to just see that there's a lot more flexibility and change within our classrooms.
First, it's a great question. And second, the role, as I see itself as a board member, is to provide leadership and direction and funding. It's the direction to the leadership that we hire and the funding to support those programs that come from thoughtful application of listening to people and developing what's needed. A successful legacy, will be improving the outcomes for all students, will be providing within this district the best educational opportunities for all of the students in the district. Currently, we lose more than a third to other districts and/or other programs. So I would love to have our district provide the best opportunities for our residents. And number three, I do want to refocus on CTE and trade skills that have gone by the wayside over the last 40 or 50 years, and they're leaving a big hole in the opportunity for students and people to earn a living in this country. So if we can work on those three, I will have a good legacy.
Thank
Any-
you.
Any other questions for us?
I think I'm great. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
With that, that is the end of the interview, and I want to thank you very much for your time. And what we'll do after this is we'll go into a brief recess so that we could go through our notes, prepare for the next candidate, take care of any business, and then we will get back going at 7 o'clock. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Now we're off, facilitator.
What's that?
Now we're off.
Yeah, we are behind.
We are behind time.
We're going to be fine.
Well, he isn't in here yet, so.
He's not here?
No, I'm saying he's not.
No,
in
no,
this
no.
room.
He's ready. We're waiting on, here we go.
All right.
All right, we're going to get going again. We will restart this meeting at 7:02 and turn it over again to Craig to get things started.
Chair Osseo, members of the board, members of the community, faculty, staff, administrators, students, it's my pleasure to introduce our third and final candidate for tonight, James Harris.
Michael Staffy.
Thank you.
It's a good name.
Well, welcome. And as you said, your district today had a snow day. We have them, we used to have them once every 10 years. We've had a few of them lately, but we're working on that. So the way we've been running this, we have 15 questions, standardized, actually 16. We've been adding some if we've had time. And we want to go through those as well as give you an opportunity to introduce yourself if you want to start off with that. If not, we can go into questions. So however you want to do that, please feel free to start.
I think with Google, everyone knows everything about me. But my name's Jim, or James Harris. I grew up in South Jersey, right over the bridge from Philadelphia. I'm currently the school superintendent for the Daniel Boone Area School District, and I do not wear a fuzzy hat for graduation. Yeah, I'm asked that every year. And every year for graduation, I do a silly Dr. Seuss story, because I love Dr. Seuss. I'm one of the few superintendents in, well, the state of Pennsylvania who is a non-traditional candidate. So for me, that's unique in a lot of different respects. I have a MBA, currently pursuing my PhD in organizational leadership, but I was never a K through 12 teacher. I worked for Coca-Cola, Bristol Myers Squibb, GlaxoSmithKline, and when I was recruited to Bristol Myers Squibb in Indiana, I opened up a restaurant, a small barbecue place. Always my dream to wear a white suit and a cowboy hat, but I didn't do that. Met a new superintendent, invited him in for breakfast to meet the staff and shake hands, and he offered me a job. And that was about 12 years ago, and I was COO of a school district with 0 experience. And he said, just treat it like it's your own money, and from there, the rest is history. So 10 years later, I'm now a school superintendent. So I usually take a different approach to running and working in a district. I look at the whole district, not just students, but I look at staff. I look at the perception of the district. I look at safety, security, transportation, food service, custodial maintenance, teachers. I look at when a student comes in, and my children go to my districts always. I want every student to be treated like my kids, and it has to be good enough for my kids and everyone else. And my son, when I first got involved with schools, and this is the last thing I say, I went to his kindergarten to read a story, Dr. Seuss, and he goes, hey, you treat these kids like they're me. And I said, well, yeah, I do, because that's how I want you to be treated. So that's how I take a look at schools. So, okay, answer all your questions now.
Okay, we'll start with the first, which is, if you can, please provide me specific examples how you've promoted educational programs in the district utilizing your communication and public relations skills.
Well, in the district I'm in, they spent years, well, in Pennsylvania, we have something called PEACers, which is our retirement fund, and that's been sort of underfunded for years. So the district cost has gone up $1 million every year. Okay, our millage rate, our property tax rate, is one of the highest in the county. So they began cutting programs. So when I got in, I took my operational look and I said, I can save you $1 million within the first 3 months. And we reduced our operational expenses and put it back into the educational programs. And I did that. There were so many programs cut, everyone wanted their programs back. Language at the middle school, music, arts, and I love theater, to bring those things back. So I do a lot of public surveys, and I let the public decide. And what I try to do is have the resources available. So we brought back in music, arts, didn't cut athletics, and then we began adding foreign languages back. And I did it through partnerships with different universities. So that way we didn't have to pay the retirement PEACers costs, PSERS costs, but we still had those activities and academic programs available to students. So I do a lot of partnerships. I sit on the board of Penn State, so I work with them. Where I am, Penn State's a big deal. And we sit there and we work on programs, tutoring things, so that the school district may only have to pay for a portion of those. But I do let the public decided our school calendar this year. I do a lot of SurveyMonkey surveys on our website and to the public, just to get some buy-in, because I feel that our staff and I live in the community have a say. So that's how I do things. So surveys a lot.
Okay, thank you. Heather?
Sorry. During the first year, how might you go about determining the strengths and weaknesses of our school district, and what specific steps would you take?
Well, for the first 3 months, I just kind of shut up and I just walk around and look and get to know people, because I'm not from here. So I don't know your norms, traditions, routines, habits, so it's really foolish of me to come in and try to set a plan. I don't have a set template that I follow. I know some superintendents say, this is my model and this is what I bring in. I don't have that. What I try to do, and I've done it in my district, I try to take the resources that you have and build the best program. I told my board when they first hired me, I would never ask you for more money. I will build the best program for whatever we can afford, and simple as that. So I have a 30, 60, and a 90-day entrance plan, and I can give you a copy of it. So it's in 3 parts. The first part is basically I just get to know people. And I can tell you, I was invited to Easter. I was here at Easter. I flew out because of the flight problems. And a local family had me over for Easter dinner because they knew I was by myself in a hotel. So it was kind of cool, you know. And they didn't have to do that, but since the job was, well, my name was posted, people were emailing me and calling me in Pennsylvania. And they knew I was coming here, and they said, are you by yourself? And I said, yeah, I'm by myself. They said, why don't you join us for Easter dinner? So just getting to know people in the community and hanging out. Plus, I was nervous. They had a really big dog. Well, so do I, but it was cool. But the dog sniffing me, I'm like, ooh, you smell my dog on me. But it was cool, and I've never done that before, you know. But it was nice not to be thoughtful that way. But I just kind of get to know people and see what their interests are. And also being new, a lot of times people try to BS me and give me all their plans that people have shot down over the years and try to scam me. And I just know to take my time and sit back and just kind of see how things play out a little bit. I don't rush, even though I'm from Jersey.
Can
Go ahead.
can I ask if you can go more into like the 60 and the 90 day?
You said you had those programs that you can share with us afterwards?
Yeah, I have a portfolio here of my work and things that you can see and take time, because I have 50 minutes. It's kind of hard to get to know me in 50 minutes.
Perfect.
So you could keep it.
Okay. What have you done to be able to increase the involvement of parents from different groups in the educational outcomes of their students?
Well, one of the things that I've done is the surveys. And the important part of reaching out to people is actually responding when they respond. So if they do a survey and then I just do whatever I want, it doesn't make any sense. So I always post the results, and they know which way we're going to go. And sometimes it's 50-50. I'm not afraid to make a decision. I also, when I was hired, is the media here? Okay, good. I can say this then.
There's one guy here.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
When I was first hired, my school board wasn't very well liked by the public. So I started inviting the kindergartners to come and do the Pledge of Allegiance before each school board meeting. What that did was it got parents who were new to the district, because they had the little ones, to come and take pictures and see their children. It also loosened the mood a little bit, and it made the board members smile. And we get up and we do pictures. But I do that at every board meeting. Sometimes a third grade band will show up. They'll play 1 or 2 songs, and they lead the pledge. But getting people to come to the meetings who don't have issues, who just want to have fun and have a nice time, really helped soften the mood of the district. And I still do it. It's been almost 3 years now. So getting people to come out. I also started a carnival. So this is the 3rd year for Blazer, or Daniel Boone Blazers, Blazer Days. And that's because I love funnel cake. And there was no carnival. I said, we need to have a carnival here. So we started a carnival 3rd year. I was in the dunk tank last year. And it's really no fun to be in a dunk tank. But just doing community-wide events and having people come to the school who aren't the usual parents for fundraisers and things, because we always go back to the same people all the time. The carnival opens up to the community. The school board meetings, you get grandparents showing up, taking pictures of their wee ones, singing and doing the national anthem or Pledge of Allegiance. So those things that bring people into the schools that maybe wouldn't be there helps, and there aren't issues at the time. They're just good, feel-good moments.
Okay, thank you. Let's see here. What has been your success as a school leader in partnering with higher education and the business community? Please mention the partnerships that have developed as a result of your leadership.
Well, my first job, and you'll see a lot of news articles about me. I always say I opened my big mouth, and I didn't know not to say or do certain things. I didn't know schools that I learned weren't very collaborative with each other. They work in silos. And I came from the business world, so my first job, I was chief operating officer of a district, and I had to go out and purchase copy paper. I had never done an RFP or an RFQ, request for a proposal, before in my life. I never bought anything in bulk. So I went to the city purchasing department and said, hey, I'm over here across the street at the school district. You buy paper, we buy paper. Let's do it together. And they threw me out. So I went online, and I learned how to do an RFP, how to do proposals. So I went to every charter school, parochial school, county government office and said, hey, you buy paper, we buy paper, let's buy it together. At the time, we were buying, I think, 15,000 cases a year. I said, let's buy 30,000. And I went to the vendors and I said, give me a price for 30,000. However, we're not going to warehouse it like we were. We're going to commit to an amount. Give me the price for the amount, and we'll order it from you weekly. And all these other entities can have the same price savings. So in the end, we saved about 25% off our costs. The mayor of the town found out what we were doing, and he called me, and he called my boss, and he said, hey, what's Jim doing over there? He goes, well, Jim came to you guys, you threw him out. He goes, well, tell Jim to come back. 3 months, well, maybe 2-3 months later, I'm now in charge of city purchasing. The city purchasing department reported to me. And at the news conference, I'm standing next to the mayor and the superintendent, and the purchasing department showed up, a room like this, and I said, do they know I'm now in charge of purchasing? And they said, well, he said, well, they're about to find out. I said, ooh, okay. From that, it became the countywide collaborative purchasing, CPO, where I started purchasing for the city, the county, school districts. We all worked together. But from that, the airport authority was involved, the zoo was involved. So the airport director said, hey, do you guys have an aviation program? I was like, no. He goes, do you want one? The new zoo director, he came from Pittsburgh, said, do you have a zoological program? I was like, no. He goes, do you want one? Our chess tournaments became not just district, but citywide with the other schools. So just because we purchased toilet tissue, chicken tenders, copy paper together, it opened up those conversations. And it's still going on today. And that collaborative, now I reported to 3 different boards, the school board, the city, and the county, but it worked really well. And we learned through economies of scale, we saved about 25%. And because we saved that money and I went to a just-in-time purchasing method, we were able to buy Chromebooks for all the high school students because I was giving money back to the general fund. I didn't need as much as they had budgeted for my departments. So those collaborations, starting an internship program at my high school. So when I got there, we had just, you kind of took anything. We now have a pathway model, which is probably common everywhere else, but it wasn't where I was. And it helps steer the students in a direction of interest. And in working with Penn State, Temple University, Drexel University, Westchester University in Pennsylvania, we're able to work with the business community, helping students get internships. Where I am also, there's a big cow, goat, and chicken population. So we have a farming community that also wants to learn about robotics to take care of the equipment. So we're adding STEM programs that are farm-based, so they can go out and learn how to fix the machinery on the farms. So just, I'm a big collaboration person because I could never afford to bring all that expertise in, and there's tons of business people, and I was one of them, who wanted to be involved with students but never had an in. And I reach out to them. And you'll see in here, one of the gentlemen who's in charge of it, I write an article 4 times a year for our local newspaper, and he commented on the articles that I write. They're not the doom and gloom usual superintendent articles. One is about my sister, who's also a teacher. I talked about how we need to recruit more teachers and the business side, and he always writes about, he likes reading my stories because they're not the doom and gloom, we need more money, boo, woe is the school district. It's always, I just take a different approach to things.
All right, thank you. Jim?
What has been your experience in determining both short and long-term district goals, and who should be involved in that planning?
Well, I sort of take the lead from the board because you're elected from the community, and I need to know, and that's one of my questions that I have, what do you want and where do you see the district going? Because a lot of times planning takes place and it takes years to implement, and I'm really a strategic planner, and sometimes you just can't make a snap decision and go with it. It takes years to do stuff. I mean, for example, I was tasked with closing a school, which is anyone ever tried to do is really hard to do. But I told the board I could do it in 3 years and no one's going to complain. And what I did was I stopped putting kids into the school. I removed the 1 grade. And in 3 years, there's no more students left in the school. So when we had the hearing to close the school, no one showed up to complain because all their kids had been moved somewhere else. And that's going to be our new admin building. And we saved over $1 million. So they had tried to close it years earlier with 700 students in it, and everyone came out and they couldn't do it. I said, well, let's move 1 grade, let's stop filling it. As it flows, it gets empty, and people get accustomed to the new norm, and it worked, and it was smoother. We moved teachers out. We kept the same support in the building as if we had, well, we had, you know, a class of 25, the teachers, but we kept the nurse, the special ed, the reading instructors, the math instructors, 1 principal, a secretary, guidance counselors, phys ed. They were all still there. We left the supports, but we slowly focused, you know, 1 grade out and shut the building down, and it worked smoothly, and no one complained about it. In fact, the community learned to adjust to it, and it worked fine. So, to answer your question, I think with the board's direction, you give me the direction, and I'll put together the plan to get it done. And you'll see in here, I do a 28-page report each week to my board. Okay, it started with 2 pages, but whenever they asked me a question more than twice, I added it to my scorecard, as you call it in business. So it's each principal sends me a weekly report Sunday by noon, because I try to get out to see the football games, because Eagles, sorry. I was told to bring you guys all T-shirts. I couldn't pack it on the plane, so they are towels or something. But sorry, hey. So. Or a tie. But yeah, the principals each have an outline that they have to look for. It's curriculum, it's student attendance, it's staff attendance, it's projects that they're working on. They follow that template, and each Sunday by noon they send that to me. My director of special ed, my facilities director, my transportation director, my food service, legal. It's all recapped and it's tracked. Student attendance is tracked along with employee attendance by building. Because those are some of the concerns we have. And then we also look at finance by the week, and it recaps to the year. And then I do a summary. And anything that I think they need to know from that past week, but it's done weekly. And I have a copy in here, you can see it. So it gets longer and longer every year. So.
Okay, thank you. So tell me what experience you've had in working within a community of diverse elements, specifically socioeconomic, educational levels, cultural differences, race and ethnicity differences, and, you know, focus on some of the socioeconomic and educational levels, if you can.
Okay. My first job, which was in Indiana, it was a rural, suburban community, about 20,000 students. That was interesting because in Indiana, if you're poor, you're really poor because the cost of living is so low. I came from New Jersey where poor is only having 2 TVs. Indiana poor is you don't have indoor plumbing poor. So when working with those students and then going to Dayton, Ohio, which was inner city, they had the issues of certain groups living on certain sides of town, desegregation, busing, that historical issues there. And that brings me to the district where I am. If you didn't know, I'm the only minority employee in my district. I'm the only black guy, a black person there at all. And for the board to hire me, they took a big leap. And for the first year, you didn't see my face on the website at all. I had my speech, my quote, but no one knew what I looked like because I wanted them to get to know me by my work, not by my face. Now, the kids all got to know me, and the neighbors where I lived in the neighborhood, they all knew me. And I would go to the events, and they go, who's that guy you're talking to? Oh, that's our superintendent. Oh, we heard about him. But it's all been good. So now my face is on the website. People know me. And in working, and I did that because the same thing with, equity and equality and everything, I didn't want to have people have preconceived notions of how I was going to be, because I came from the Philadelphia school district. They got the city guy coming in, he's going to change everything, we're opposed to him. We know how the comments in the newspapers go, but no one knew what I looked like. I could go to the gym, the grocery store, no one knew who I was. The kids gave me away. And I feel the same thing in the classrooms. I think if we have higher expectations and keep equal expectations of all of our students, we'll be fine. I've worked in districts, schools, where everyone spoke Spanish but me. It's really hard to call a snow day when you don't speak Spanish. Trust me. I worked in all African American schools in Cleveland, and where I had all white teachers, and I was the only African American administrator there. Both sides, parents only want their children to have an opportunity. And for me, bringing in the right staffing and making sure that teachers and the custodians, the food people, the bus drivers are all on the same page with not having prejudices towards the kids and thinking they all can achieve. So those areas I've worked well with. I would go into a classroom and teachers running out crying. I turned into my grandmother. I would say, go to my office, get a ginger ale, some saltine crackers, and settle your stomach and it'll be okay. And I would go into the class and say, stop making your teachers cry, please. I can't find subs. And they would turn it around a little bit, but just making sure that the teachers and the students both respected each other. I have always lived in the communities that I worked, so I usually had a little more leeway with the kids. They would see me in the barbershop on Saturdays. They go, hey, what are you doing here? I say, I live up the street. Where do you live? I'm not telling you. One time I bribed a kid for a week with Skittles so he wouldn't tell anyone where I live because he found out. But I really think that keeping the same expectations for these kids, and who knows what their home life is like. Some kids come from really troubled home lives. Some kids don't. Some kids come to school with their bellies full, some with it empty. We do a lot of work in schools that isn't about reading and writing and math. We're growing young men and women, and I really feel if we give them an opportunity and a chance to learn and achieve, they can. But sometimes we need to balance it out a little bit, and that goes back to the equity and things like that. But in working with the students, in any district I've been in, they know that I treat everyone the same, like they're my son or daughter, and that's the best I can do.
Okay, thanks. We're about 24 minutes into 50 minutes, and we're through 6 of 15 questions. So just wanted to give you a heads up on that. We do want to try to get through all of them if we can. Heather?
You've touched on this in some of your other answers, but as a superintendent, what would be your role in the budgetary process? Please specify.
Well, I was taught zero-based budgeting. I look at what does it cost to run the programs that we need to operate. Not how much money do we have, let's spend it. And there's always those things that keep us in compliance. I'm a big compliance person. I'm an ex-military guy. We got to follow the rules. So what keeps us in compliance? And then what are the add-ons? What are the must-haves? What are the non-negotiables? And once we have that, what does it really cost? Because I think a lot of times we get money, or we have a budget, but is that budget just an arbitrary number that was thrown out and then you try to spend to it? What does it really cost to operate? And then that's what we should look at. Sometimes when I did my operations, I needed much less. I didn't need as much as they were giving me. And I said, well, I don't need all this money. You can take it back and go do something with it. And they were like, really? I said, no, I don't need all this. When I was in Dayton, I was managing one area was transportation. I saved a couple $1 million, and they said, I had 19 million, I spent 13. They said, well, where's the other money? I said, I cut back on overtime. I started scheduling how the contract says. So a lot of times it's not mismanagement, well, heck, it's mismanagement a lot of times. So zero-based budgeting, what does it really cost? Maybe we need more. If I got in there and I had 19 million, I needed 22 to do it appropriately. But you have to look at how much do we need in resources to achieve the goals and the expectations that we want. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, sometimes it's right on. But I don't like that last-minute spend when you have grant money and you go out and you buy copy paper just because you need to spend $3,000 more dollars. That's, if you're going for a grant, I always say, what kind of program will you have with 100% of that grant money received? Say it's $100. Build your plan for $100. What if you get 75% of that? Build a plan for $75. So then when you get the money, you're not surprised. Sometimes you get more. Build a plan if you had $125, just in case. So then when it comes in, you're prepared to react. Don't wait and say, okay, we had $100, we only spent $50. Let's go out and spend the rest so we get more money next year. That for me, that's wasteful. So hopefully I answered.
How would you handle decisions that are unpopular with the public, but educationally and/or financially necessary? Please cite your examples, and you stated one by.
Well, the one I did, we closed the school. When I got to the district, we realized where I am, there's a highway that kind of cuts right down the middle of the district. One side is the haves, the other is the have-nots, honestly. And when we had multiple elementary schools doing dissimilar activities. One was STEM work, and they're out there doing computer-based learning, and they're out there building gardens. The other was just doing worksheets. Those kids went up, and they ended up at the middle school, and when they got to the middle school, well, where do you live? Where are you from? So that was one of the reasons why I closed the school. But when I closed the school, I also reconfigured all the elementary schools. So I took one of the elementary schools and I made it pre-K through 2. The other is 3 through 5. Closed the other middle school, and then they go to the middle school. Because I felt that at each of those grades, the groupings, there were unique learning opportunities and needs for those grades. I created basically a little kid academy and then a little bigger kid academy. And when you grow a garden looks much different for kindergartners than it does for 4th and 5th graders. For kindergartners, you're like, don't eat the worms. And you know, for 5th and 6th grade, they're making salads and they're learning about the agriculture and things like that. And just allocating resources, I now have all my early childhood experts in that building, and the kids are playing in the sandbox together from both sides of the highway. I don't have that divide. You don't know where they came from anymore. The teachers aren't biased in some cases. The administrators aren't biased in some cases. The community's not biased. And the kids are getting along better because we have a bullying issue at middle school. I think most people do. The kids, they treat each other like crap sometimes at middle school. They pick on each other. But now they're growing up together. So hopefully those transitions, they're not meeting new faces. They're growing up together and they transition together. And we put the best resources that are applicable for each age group in those buildings so we could reallocate our resources. And in doing that, which I thought I created something new, but I found out later it was called the Princeton model, we ended up reducing our teaching staff, but I was allowed not to reduce our overall numbers because we were allowed to keep our numbers there, but add other resources, like bring the languages back. So I didn't lay off a teacher, I had another reading specialist. And I added Spanish, I added German, into the program, added Mandarin into the program because I was allowed to keep those employee numbers. And I told the board, just let me tweak the resources and be nimble, and it worked. So, and the community liked it because I didn't just chop. And we had, I did community meetings at the different schools, and I did tours of the school so parents could go in and see. I offered, when we were phasing out the school, if you had a sibling in another school, you could go to that school. And as we phased it in, people got comfortable. And the principals put on their funny hats and they gave tours of everyone and made everyone feel special. And we did training for teachers. We didn't just say, okay, you're from that building, you go down that hallway. We did professional development together, grade level, that we couldn't do before. So that's worked.
Thank you.
How would you ensure that services are provided for gifted and talented special education, career and technology, ELL, and visual and performing arts students? Give 2 examples of where you've developed programs to support 2 of these areas.
Well, I could say on performing arts and career tech, we developed pathways. We didn't have that before. And we took our existing resources and built the pathways. I didn't say, because we couldn't do a full STEM because we didn't have those instructors there, but we took our resources, like I always like to do, and just utilize them better. Gifted and talented, I found when I reviewed the data for my 3 through 5 building, the beginning of the year, the students who were at a higher level weren't performing at a higher level at the end. We were kind of losing them because we were teaching to the low. And those kids weren't getting the rigor or being challenged. So we put measures in place once we reconfigured the schools because we had 10 or 11 of the same grade in a building, and we allocated our resources and did more project-based learning and gave them extra work and projects to do to help increase the rigor that they were doing. Also at the high school level, we started doing online work with other schools. So where I am, there's another 17, 18 school districts, and we all have the same issue with resources, costs. So we're now starting to do, and the first thing we did was a Mandarin language program that's online. There's a TV in the room, and the teacher is somewhere else, and all of our students are taking that class together. And the people who are taking that class are the ones who are doing really well in their languages, who wanted an added challenge. So we're trying to build more of those types of programs, because in my district, if you have less than 10 students, we can't have the class. So we could have 8 students who are interested in Latin, and my neighboring district could have 6 students, and another district could have 5. Well, we could all chip in for that teacher and set that up and do it that way. So that's how we're working with the gifted students and bringing, trying to elevate that. On the technical side, we have I'm in Berks County, PA, a Berks Career Technical Center, but we found that that center was kicking a lot of the kids out if they weren't performing. So we started just looking at students, and my son was one of them. He's interested in architecture and engineering, but doesn't want to go to a technical school, but he wants to apply what he's learning in math and science in an applicable way. So we're allowing them to take a couple classes hands-on to build things, to use that knowledge that they're learning in math and science in a tech program. So the tech group is still getting students, but it's a different type of student, and they're not being looked down upon. It's not the kids who couldn't hack it in a business or a college prep program or one of the pathways. They're applying what they're learning in a different way, and it's working so far.
All right, thank you.
Describe your beliefs about student discipline and safety.
Well, student discipline, do you mean kids are fighting or just not getting along? Or should they be suspended, expelled?
Kind of the whole gamut. How do you deal with that? What's your
Well,
philosophy?
when I ran a building in Cleveland there, it was a middle school. I wanted the kids to shake hands and apologize. I wanted them to shake hands, apologize to each other, and apologize to the teacher. So I had an office in the office, and I was also the school nurse. So I would see the kids come in and sit in the little sofa couch, and I would say, "Are you in trouble or are you sick?" And they would say, "I'm in trouble." I said, "Well, what are you accused of doing?" Because you're accused until found guilty. And they would say, if it was a boy, a girl was messing with him, and he was disruptive, and I would say, "Come with me." And I said, "You know what you did was wrong, right?" And he goes, "Yes, I know." I said, "I want you to go back and I want you to apologize to the teacher for disrupting his or her class." And the boys would always say yes, the girls would say heck no. But in the time I walked them back to class, I said, "Look, the teacher took a lot of time to prepare his or her class. You're being disruptive. You know what you did was wrong. You're going to go back into that room, you're going to apologize and get back to work. I'm not going to call home because me kicking you out for the day isn't going to solve anything. You're still going to be a knucklehead tomorrow. So we're going to change your behavior and get you back in." And I found a lot of times the kids found it harder to apologize because they could do a lunch detention like that. It was no problem. But to have them own up to what they did was wrong, to apologize to the young lady, to apologize to the teacher, and it moved on, and you found it was a lot smoother. Safety and security, I don't know if you read in the paper, I did a impromptu lockdown drill of my high school and middle school a couple weeks ago with the sheriff's department. We brought the drug-sniffing dogs in. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell the principals. I didn't tell the teachers. I didn't tell my assistant superintendent. I just did it. And we looked like a SWAT team rolling up to the school. I said, lock the building down, because we had practices for lockdown drills and active shooter drills, but they've always been pre-announced. I did it on a Tuesday. I didn't tell my kids either, because they have big mouths, and they would have told all their friends. And I dropped my daughter off, dropped my son off. I drove back around to my daughter's middle school. The sheriff's officers, all 5 of them were there with 3 dogs. I walked into the office. I said, lock the building down. They said, why? I said, lock it down. I found that they didn't know where the principals were. We found no drugs, and we went through the building, and it went fine. You would have thought they would have called the high school and said, I'm on their way, but they didn't call the high school. I went right to the high school. High school didn't know where the principals were. I said, okay. I said, I don't think an active shooter is going to come in and say, lock the doors, because I'm going to do some crazy stuff here. But we did. And in the high school, we searched the lockers, didn't find anything. However, I went door to door checking to see if the doors were locked and everything. I found 3 doors that were unlocked. One was a sub, and she didn't know how to lock the door. The door next to her, they didn't shut the door all the way, but it was locked. And then the last door I went to, she said she forgot to lock the door. I just walked in, you should really lock the door. Thank you. And I met with the staff later, and we debriefed in the sheriff's department, and they were very happy that we didn't find any drugs or anything. But the not ready for anything that could happen, and something could happen at dismissal or departure or on the field for play at gym, but I wanted to show them that they need to be prepared, not unnerved or anything, but just ready to go. I instituted a bit more training, wear your ID badges, making sure we're following the various processes. And one of the things we also realized, do we answer the phones during a lockdown? What happens? Because every parent was calling. My son was texting me 19 times, what's going on? I didn't respond to him. So the state police showed up, what's going on? And the sheriff and the state police had a little issue with the jurisdiction, but they learned from that. The high school was in a state police territory, but the sheriff handles the county. Sheriffs came out, state police were like, well, we're here. Sheriff said, well, we're here, go away. So they learned from that also. Also, the sheriffs told me that they got lost in our schools. They don't come out to the schools a lot, so if something happens, they don't know where the cafeteria is. So we learned we needed to prepare them and give them resources to know where things were. So I like safety and security because, one, my children are there, and I could be there. There is one district near me that gave the kids rocks. That's in my area, where they student gave a bucket of rocks for the kids to throw at the intruder. We're not doing that. But yeah. So I like drills. I like practicing. When I got there, we didn't know our evacuation sites. Now we do. We practice things. And I think the staff is just, especially the teachers, feel better prepared and that they're ready to go if something happens. So.
Thank you.
All right, we have about 13 more minutes to keep everyone equal time, and we have about 5 more questions. So give us some specific ideas of how you would judge your own effectiveness as a superintendent and how the board should evaluate your work.
Well, in Pennsylvania, I have a state requirement review that they follow, but then I add a few more things that I like. One of the things, when I got to the district, our legal costs were super high because everyone called the attorneys. So I set up where I call if there's an issue, and our costs went down. And I also, for the last, I shouldn't say this right now, but for the last 2 years, we haven't had one grievance because I work to the contract. Like it or not, that's what we all agree on. So I work to the contract. I make sure we stay in compliance with that, and that cut down on our costs. I look at things that I have control over. So I look at enrollment. I also look at staff attendance. I think if people are happy, they come to work. And if they're not happy, they use all their sick or personal vacation, bereavement time that they can use. So I try to use that as a guide if people are happy coming to work. I look at I also started last year a kind of public survey, once again, on how we respond to them. When they call the district, are they getting through right away? Are they getting the response that they deem appropriate? So those are the few things that I look at as my levels that I could help with. Also, just staff, overall, how the staff feels. I was also told to fix the football team. So, working on that.
All right, thank you.
Okay. What do standardized test scores tell us and not tell us about a school district? And how can you ensure that ELL and FRL students can perform to their best abilities?
Well, standardized test scores really only tell you that they're good at taking the test. So teachers have a lot better assessment of a student's growth. I look at growth a lot. I think that's really indicative of what teachers should be doing, because everyone doesn't come in equal. So in my old world of operations, it was very easy. It's on time, it's on budget, or not. It's very cut and dry. To have that still applied to teachers, it doesn't really seem fair, because all students are different, they learn differently. But I understand the reason behind the testing, because I've lived in different states and cities. And when I lived in Indiana and Ohio, I moved to New Jersey, and I use my son as an example because he's been with me all the time, from kindergarten to now high school. He's told me the freshman class in Ohio was much different than the class in New Jersey. Different. And I understand when you go to college, you don't want to have students coming from different regions of the country not on the same level. So I understand that the No Child Left Behind, the race to the top, everything, the rationale behind that. However, I think the people who put those together really didn't spend much time in the classroom with students. That's the business way of looking at things. So in order to have everyone succeed, we have to have individual goals and objectives with this for the students and get a lot more teacher input. In my world, for teacher evaluations in PA, there's their overall classroom observations, their student achievement, so it's in various parts. I don't think it's fair to judge a teacher's success on just one student taking a test. That doesn't seem fair, because there's a lot of work that goes behind that also.
All right, thank you.
What are the key components of a successful curriculum and instructional program in a district, and how do you get each site involved in the effort?
Well, we do, one, you have to know where you want to end up. And we use curriculum writing teams. And I am trying very hard, because our curriculum wasn't updated for years. And I've been in some districts where you see it on the website. So you kind of see the pathway. And I like transparency. I like to know where my daughter is working on. I want to be able to go into her cafeteria and quiz the sixth graders. So how's that, whatever project you're working on? Because I looked and I saw where they should be. The curriculum writing is important and also for all the teachers to be on the same page, because sometimes they have different styles and techniques. They need to have buy-in. So we use our teacher leadership teams, and they put together the curriculum. And we're going one-to-one computers next year at the high school. And we chose iPads because they have a lot more resources in their iTunes area that was also free, that we could build our curriculum around. So we're actually rewriting all of our curriculum now using those teams. And I gave the teachers 1 year just to play with the iPads. So they have them, but we're not using them yet, so that they get comfortable. Because it isn't fair to give teachers tools and not really train them and give them a chance to learn to operate them. And same thing with curriculum. It helps that my teams that handle the academics understand where they need to be, and the resources are there for them to use. So that answers the question.
Thank you.
How do you provide the oversight and lead others who have direct responsibilities in a district this size? Specifically, how do you hold others accountable for delivering the mission of the district?
Well, one, everyone needs to know what the game plan is and the mission. I don't micromanage. And one of my principals, who's actually retiring this year, who I'm going to miss, he's an elementary school teacher, he's the craziest guy. If I tell him that's probably not a good idea, but it's good for kids, he's going to do it. And I love him for it. He's great. He's the family favorite. He's the biggest fundraiser. I know because I gave a lot of money when my daughter was there. He's our safety security guy. He's fantastic. But how I manage them is through the weekly report. That's their guide. If you've ever been a salesperson, you know if you're getting a bonus on something, that's what everybody's trying to sell. So the list of 6, 7, 8 things that they are reporting each week are what I'm tracking. And that's what they need to focus on. And that's how we go. Now, some of the principals don't like it because the high school principal really designed it. But he was the most technical data person, so we built systems to help them capture what needs to go on the weekly report easier. But that's how I do it. There's not always sometimes there are a few folks who don't buy in, but we have a nice discussion, and then we agree. The same way I work with the board and the community, I try to take them along the pathway of why we need to do X. And a lot of times, by the time I got to M, they're going, we need to do X. I'm like, glad you said that. Flip chart, here you go. We're going to do that. So taking people along that your thought process really helps them understand where you need to be. And there are times where I have principals who butt heads all the time. But we kind of figure out why they're butting heads and then working through that. And we're all adults. But if someone's really getting off track, it helps. I do a monthly staff meeting, and a lot of times I'll go out to see them because I don't like pulling them out of their building. I just added a chief academic officer this year. My district didn't have one. So making sure that everyone has the right resources also to help them. I'm adding assistant principals this year because my district always tries to do more with less, but sometimes you scale back so that you're inefficient. So I saw them working hard. They didn't complain. I said, you need some help. Let me see what help I can get you. And sometimes I'll come in the building. If a principal needs off, I'll be the principal for the day, which is not a good idea because I like to have fun in the cafeteria. But no foo fights, but I do like to have fun. So getting them the right resources that they need and letting them know that they have a voice and that they're appreciated also. I do a thing called the Golden Apple where the public can online submit teacher or staff names for good things that they've done, and once a month I go out with my IT director who has a nice camera. We give a certificate and we take nice pictures to make people feel good. And I read what the student or the parent said to them. And it's really great if the student is in the room and I can really embarrass the student by having the student read to the teacher what they said. So it's just little things like that make people feel good.
Okay. And we have about 4 minutes left, and this is the final question, which is what questions do you have for the board, Jim?
Okay. Let's see, what can I ask you? Well, first of all, why are you interested in me? I'm always curious about that because I do have a different background. I look at things a little bit differently. I do have a sense of humor. I like to have fun, but people knew I was coming here because I took a vacation day. I've never taken a vacation day or a sick day in years. So when I put in for, I think, 3 vacation days, my secretary says, what's going on? Because I never take a day off because I really don't have a life. I just come to work all the time. So I was curious because usually it's my diverse background. I have a business background, but I realized that behind the money, it affects people. And I've learned that along the way. My first job as COO, I had never even been in a school building since I graduated high school. So when I had the opportunity, I asked to be placed in a school and to assist the principal because I wanted to see what a teacher's day was like. I wanted to know why they made so many copies because copy paper was killing me, and so was it the machines. So I got involved that way. And then I did school turnaround work. I would go into the worst of the worst state takeover, and I would go in and flipped the school twice. Went to Philadelphia schools, I ran their schools, and now I'm superintendent. But a lot of times when a district, I'm always curious, because I'm not the traditional, I was a elementary school teacher, I became a vice principal, I'm talking about my sister now, become a principal, and I'm a director of curriculum, and now I've been in education for 25 years, and it's my time. I've been doing this for about a little bit less than a dozen years.
I'll take a stab, Mike, if you don't.
Well, I was going to say, I think you answered some of your questions.
Yeah.
By saying that, you have done certain things. And again, when we put together the specifications for who we're looking for, and gave that to Ray and Associates, we polled ourselves, we polled our teachers, our community members, hundreds and hundreds of people gave feedback. And, the whole thing, are we looking for non-traditional or not? There wasn't necessarily a focus on it, but there was certainly, hey, we would be interested in finding people who have different backgrounds, who could help, who could bring a different perspective. And that was one of the criteria. And again, Ray's went out and did that research and presented you to us. And that, along with some of the other things you mentioned, got you to this cut, so.
And I can tell you that I've been asked to go to different school districts. I withdrew today from the other district that was interested in me, so you're it. Okay. I also chose you because I wasn't looking, but I thought this would be a good district for my daughter. She's in 6th grade. She loves theater. My son is graduating. He can go somewhere, but hopefully college somewhere. But I thought this would be a good place for her to be. I read about you, and I looked. I said, you know what? I went back, and then they asked me would I be interested. And I said, you know what? Talked to my wife. I said, you know what? Ella would like this school, this area, and that's why I submitted I said, go for it. So, but I did withdraw this afternoon, from the other district that wanted me.
I'll
So-
just add a little bit more to Mike's answer. I am a teacher in another district in the state here. And so coming from education, usually, you said the road you go. And actually your background it was attractive to me. Your CPO that you created with your district was very interesting. And being on this board as, a taxpayer, that's something that's interesting to me, to save people money. And I also really like that you live in the district and put your kids in the schools in the district. And I think that's really important, to be able to shape the experiences that your kids are gonna have. And I think that's an important asset to us.
And I'll just add that what stood out about you to me was leadership is sometimes much more than what's on paper. It's personality, it's your ability to inspire and really lead. And your background, although very interesting, we're in a place where we need revitalization. We need families coming back to our community. We need families excited about being here and feeling having a vested interest in our community. And that's something that I saw in what you provided and felt really good about. So that's just my perspective. So thank you.
I have one condition, though, if you're going to consider me, and this is something I started at Daniel Boone. You have to take $10,000 from my salary and start a scholarship fund. I do that where I am now. So whatever, if you decide, if you can do that legally, I know that's an issue sometimes, but you have to, I start a superintendent scholarship fund. So far, I've given away $20,000. So it's $10,000 into a scholarship fund, and it's basically a student writes an essay on what they've learned at school these 12 years when they graduate. I give it away. So if you can arrange that with your attorney general, I had that in Pennsylvania. It's hard to give away money sometimes, but I take a $10,000 deduction in my salary to do a scholarship fund. So.
Thank you very much. We are out of time, but thank you very much for your time and coming out here this evening. So,
Yeah.
thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Here's my, oops. Oh, that's on.